Okay, well, welcome everybody. This is Dan Soares, Dan, the real estate man. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a guest and a friend and client, Amol, who works for Cummins in Columbus, Indiana. He's joining us today, and we're just going to have a very casual interview. He's going to share a little bit of his experience with us, and we'll go from there. So if you're watching us, thanks for joining us. I hope you get some value and some out of today's video. And that's it. Amal, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dan, and hello, everyone.
Yeah. Hey,
It's good to be here.
do you want to quickly kind of introduce yourself? Maybe give a little bit of background, who you are, where you're from. Just a little bit so people get to know who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Amol K. I work for Cummins in purchasing. I've been with Cummins for 20 years. I've been in Columbus for 10 years. Um I'm originally from India. I was Dan's neighbor here in Columbus before he moved out. And that's where I got to know him, and that's where I got to know some of the details of real estate that he was working on, and the confidence that I could do it as well.
Yes. Great. Thanks for that introduction. So I don't have a set script for today. Okay, this will be a very casual, informal conversation. Um, so how many properties you have right now? Can you remind me,
Yeah,
including
so I have
including the one that you live in?
yeah, so I have four properties right now, including the one I live in. So three rentals and the primary residence.
Great. So three rentals. You see, so that's starting getting some volume out there, right? Four properties.
Yeah,
It's a number that starts growing, and the good thing with that is every month now you have a little bit more coming in from those properties, and that's excellent. What got you to start in real estate, right? Because I mean that's not something that everybody does, right? Some people will do stock market. Some people will do mutual funds. There's different ways that people can invest, and if you're up to now, you got four properties. Something told you, you know what, maybe I should look into real estate as an option for investment. What got you kind of a curious or started in real estate?
yeah. So you always read and hear that real estate is a good investment to have. But to be honest, I was always hesitant, right? Because it felt like it's going to be a lot of work. Coming from a foreign country, I didn't know what to expect. In US, how people would behave, the tenants that I would get. Um, I didn't know how to search for the tenants, and you always hear about these liabilities that come when you have a real estate, and people could sue you and stuff like that. So very hesitant investor, even though I always knew that investing in real estate is something that you could pursue because there are high returns, right? So uh, when we moved to Columbus, this was 10, 11 years ago, we bought a house. It was a smaller house because we had a small family at that time. And as the family grew, we had kids, we moved to a bigger house, right? But since I always had this feeling that hey, I should do something in real estate, I kind of rented that house out uh, to a buddy of mine who was from India. I was so hesitant that I didn't, want to. I didn't know how to search for, clients, nothing. But I just knew somebody. I rented it out to them, and then moved to this new house. And that's where I got. I would say I was fortunate to be in a house that was next to Dan, and we got to know each other. And I quickly found out that he has a lot of rental properties, and that's how the conversation started. And I asked him, hey, so, how do you manage it? How do you look for people? How do you figure out what the rent should be? How do you manage liabilities? And I think that's where I got coached by him, where he advised to start my own LLC, right? If I'm worried about liability, I started my LLC, and he told me, how to put the first of all. After that, he helped me to buy a property. We looked at a lot of different options, but finally, so I learned more and more, right? As we visited properties, in Franklin, Greenwood, Columbus. Uh, so every time I went visited a property, I gained new insight, and finally settled that I should buy properties in Columbus, where it's going to be easy to manage, versus outskirts of Columbus, where I initially wanted to invest. So taking me through the whole buying process, telling me how to put the property out there, uh, to get clients. All of that. I think I got coached, and I knew that since he was my neighbor, I could always go bug him, right? So I went and bought my first property, and kind of experienced how that whole thing went, and it was not as bad as it felt like before I dove in. So maybe after having that experience for 6 months, I bought another one, and then another one with Dan. So that's how the journey went.
Thanks for sharing that. And it's funny because there's always going to be people out there that are going to say, there's a lot of risk, there's a lot of liability, it's too much work managing tenants, it's a nightmare. And you do hear those horror stories. And if you grow and you stay in the game long enough, maybe you will get to experience some of that. I think it's inevitable, depending on the size of your portfolio, that you will have some bad experiences. But all in all, what do you think? Do you think it's been worth it to invest in real estate over the
Oh
last,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. My experience has been good. Uh, I think it's key to spend time looking for the right tenant, right? So I think doing the background check and looking at their income to expense ratio, uh, right, and really getting that feel of whether this person is really who you want. Would he be able to pay rent? Would he be a good tenant? I think just getting a gut and looking at some of the real numbers is the key. So me and my wife both go and meet these potential tenants, right? So unless we both agree that this would be the right person, we never go for it, right? So if it's just me and she doesn't feel right about it, or if it's just her and I don't feel right about it, we don't do it. So that's kind of been a trick for us. To look at do the background check, look at the income, uh, expense, and just a gut feel of how the person feels like, right? Whether he'll be a good guy to have on your property. So that's the key. But it's been good. The whatever process we have in place now has worked well for all three properties, and it's gone well. It's not a lot of work, as I anticipated before, right? I mean, when you buy the property, of course, with inspection, and then you know what things to fix. You just go fix those. And then it's not a lot. I mean, it's famous for us. It's not been a lot of work for me.
that's great.
Just some calls here and there, but of course, I mean, you um need to have the right handyman at your disposal. And that's another thing that Dan has helped me with. He's given me contacts for some of the people who can do uh, handyman work, from everything from roof to HVAC to everything. And right, I mean, you just call them uh, and get the work done without you having to do much hands on. So it has worked well. It's a good return. Um, Rental market is hot. The real estate prices keep going up, right? So there's nothing to complain.
That's one of the things that I feel it's amazing about investing in real estate is it's an asset that's always appreciating in value, right? Over time,
Mhm.
real estate's always going to be more expensive. So you buy an asset, and if you have a mortgage on, your tenant's paying for that mortgage for you, and over time you're just
Yeah.
building up equity, and you look back and say,
Mhm.
well, how did I because eventually those properties will be paid off if you do have a mortgage on them, and you look back and say, how did I pay off 20 units? Well, I didn't
Yeah.
pay off 20 units, my tenants did, right? All I
Yeah.
had to do
Exactly.
is get started on it, and then over
Hmm.
time the portfolio
Hmm.
builds itself.
Yeah.
Great. So you started somewhat organically, right? So you were a homeowner, and you decided it was time for you to upgrade and move to a house. And instead of just selling that house, you decided that you would turn that into your first rental property. And then
Personally. Yeah.
you had a good experience with that, and then you decided, well, I'm going to get another one, and then another one, and then another one,
Yeah.
and you now have the four properties. You work full time.
Yeah.
Wife
I work
also
full time
works,
at
and
Cummins.
you manage the property yourself, right? You don't have a property manager taking care of that for you.
Yeah. I manage property myself, as I said, right? I mean, I've been lucky, not had many complaints at all, and the process that I talked through before, where you do get the inspection done and do the fixes that are needed. It's easy to tell, right? And after that, I think if you have the right person who doesn't damage, I think it should be good after that.
So if I hear you right, the key, because you don't have to be a full-time real estate person to do this, right? You still have a
Yeah, no,
full-time job, and by the way, a
yeah,
demanding job, because you're a successful person at your job and at what you do, but you still have time to manage your properties and take care of your family and everything
yeah,
else. It sounds like the key is finding the right property and then also finding the right tenant.
yeah. Finding the right property, finding the right tenant. That's about it, right? If you do those things right, then I think it's a really good investment.
And some takers to finding the right property is you make sure that you find a property in a good location, in a decent condition. That doesn't mean that the property always has to be new, right? We just have to understand what the
Hmm.
scope is of any repairs, and
Yeah,
and then you address those. Now, what's and you alluded to finding the right tenants. There's some key things to look, right? Employment history, income. What's the income to that ratio? Are they going to be able to
yeah,
pay that? And then you have a feel
yeah,
for, are these going to be a good fit for my property?
yeah. Background check is another one, right? So income, expense to income ratio, the background check, and all this sounds very intimidating. It used to for me, right? But this is all. If you go to Zillow, this is all the basic functionality, right? So you just need to list your property, and when people apply to Zillow, it comes with all of these things in there. So it's really very easy. There's not much to do. There's a little bit of work initially before you select the person, but not much. It all comes as a package with applications.
So basically, you list the property online. People will send their application in, and you can just go through the application, make sure that, and you have to develop your own criteria, right? I
Yeah, yeah,
remember you have called me before and say, how do you know who's the right person? And I gave you some pointers of, hey, I look at ratio income. Some people will want,
yeah,
3 times rent. Some people will ask 4 times rent. Some people
yeah.
want long-term employment history.
Mhm,
Some people understand that maybe they're relocating. They're not in their job for a long time,
mhm,
but
yeah,
they seem to be stable. Every person will have their own criteria, but selecting the right tenant's key.
yeah. You'll have your own criteria, as Dan said, right? It's not a one size fit all, but I think you kind of develop that as you get into it. It just depends on what your comfort level is, but usually, if it's just a person with no kids, maybe 2.5x is okay. But if it's kids, then 3 to 4x of the income is what is needed. So things like that, you'll have to just figure those out. But those are not rocket science. It's easy.
And every
Um,
market's also different, right? Some markets might have some more flexibility than others. Columbus is a very strong market, right? There's a good employment base. There's a lot of stable
yeah.
employment in this area. Some other places,
Mhm.
you may have tenants that are on Social Security or they are on Section 8. So the
Yeah.
government's actually paying for the rent. So you
Yeah.
minimize risk of no payment, but then you have other factors that you have to look into it as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have
Yeah.
any tenants that are on Section 8 right now, or all your tenants they pay for their own rent?
Nobody on Section 8. Everybody pays for their own rent.
Okay.
That's one area I've not explored. Maybe something that I'll do in the future. But everybody pays their own right now. And
And
it's so, I mean, the real estate market in Columbus is very hard. You put it out there on Zillow and you'll have 100 applicants in 2 days. Right. So, I have not had a need to explore the Section 8 yet because there's already, so many out there who are looking for a house. And you can easily find, three or four that meet your filtering criteria that you can go talk to and just seal the deal.
so most of the time, it's not a matter of finding a good tenant, but selecting the best tenant among a pool of good tenants, right? It seems like there's at
Absolutely.
least,
Yeah.
a few different options, a few different, that would be good tenants, and then you just have to select which one is the best fit. So
Yeah.
finding a good tenant hasn't been a struggle. It's you just have to develop your own process and then find
Yeah.
in the pool of candidates who do you think is the best.
Hmm.
Do you ever felt like you had so many good tenants that were applying that you wish you had an extra house or two that you could rent to them as well?
Yeah. I mean, exactly. Right. So, I had to say no to people who I would have rented it out to, right? But we had it ranked. Hey, we'll first go to this, and then if that person doesn't say yes, then we'll go to the second one. But all of them are good. So absolutely, if we had other property, we had people lined up.
Yeah, so it's there's just still a strong demand for rentals, which for us as real estate investors, it puts us in a good position because then
Hmm.
we know that if we pull the trigger on another house and we get another rental to
Hmm.
our portfolio, that we're gonna have a good pool of candidates
Hmm.
and people to rent those properties out to.
Yeah, yeah.
What is for people who are out there and maybe are watching the video and maybe they are in your position, they have a full-time job, they're thinking in about real estate as an investment option, but they're still a little bit on the fence. They're afraid, they've heard of the people that they say the bad things about it. What would you say to those folks who are watching and potentially considering investing in real estate? Would you have any advice for them?
And go for it. I mean, that's the simple advice that I have, right? It's not as bad as it sounds. It's not a lot of work as people, talk. But again, I mean, the key is finding the right house that has to be in decent shape at the right in the right neighborhood. Finding the right client. Uh, then it's all worth it, right? So go for it. It's not as hard as it seems. It's a good return on the investment.
Good deal. Good
And
deal.
if you need advice, right, like what I did, go talk to Dan. He'll tell you how to
That's
do
one thing that will
it.
say, well, maybe another thing is go talk to Dan or find a good agent that will help you. And now not to
Yeah.
badmouth other agents out there, but there are lots of good agents out there. But there's not a lot of
Hmm.
agents who are also investors, right? Because
Yeah.
that will give you different lenses to understand the market. Because I not only
Hmm.
sell on your property, but I am an investor myself, so I know, hey, this is something I would
Yeah.
invest in or something I would not invest in, and understanding the numbers behind. Okay, is this gonna
Hmm.
cash flow or not?
Hmm.
What's the
Yeah.
appreciation potential for this property? How
Hmm.
much equity I'm gonna get over the next few years, or what the cash flow is. Things that maybe people who don't invest in real estate themselves they might overlook. They say, yeah,
Hmm.
this is a good property, but not all properties are good rentals, right? It could be a good
Yeah.
property and
Yeah.
not necessarily be a good rental.
Yeah. I think if you remember one of the properties we looked at, I don't know which neighborhood it was, I think 300 South or something, right? But you know, um, it was a good house. It was remodeled, right? But it was priced around 150, 160,000, right? And I think you would not get more than 800, 900 or 1,000 bucks rent in that, right? So I think we did the math at that time saying it's not worth investing. It was a good property, but to the point that you're making, I mean, you also have to figure out in your mind, what return do you want? And if you're just going to get 800 to $1,000 for a 150,000 house, then maybe it's not worth it. So let it go as well. So that's the key again, right? In trying to choose which property to invest in. Some might be good, but not really a good rental income investment.
Yeah. One thing that I like to share with people who are looking into real estate investing, sometimes, people will look at the house and say, is this something I would live in? And sometimes that question is appropriate for some people, maybe who are starting out. But if you live in a Class A neighborhood, you're probably not going to, buy another Class A property as a rental. If you look
Yeah.
around your neighborhood, you say it's not like a rental neighborhood, right? So there's different markets for rental versus homeowner neighborhoods.
Hmm.
My rule of thumb is usually a C class type of property. Blue collar is where you have people with steady income, and they're not going to give you a lot of you know headache, and it will rent fast. If you start moving into the A neighborhoods, then cash flow is going to be a struggle because now you're paying a premium for the
Hmm.
property, and a lot of the people who would afford to live in those houses, they usually are homeowners, right? So they wouldn't necessarily rent because
Hmm.
they're homeowners. And if you start going too far, out like to the D and E neighborhoods, yeah, they would cash flow, but then you start messing with a type of tenant that might not be as stable, and maybe will give
Hmm.
you a headache because they will break things around the house, or they don't have steady
Yeah.
income, and now you have to get them to collections or evictions and things like that. So
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
sweet spot there around the C class neighborhoods. I think it's where the sweet spot is for rentals.
Yeah. Exactly. I think that's where I have my rentals. Right. I mean, not the A because those are too expensive. You won't get the return that you want. Those are big houses, right? And it's most likely going to be difficult to find people to stay in a big house, right? If they can rent a house that big, then they might as well just buy, right? So going to the C type of housing, which are small to medium sized houses, uh, still good amount of rent uh, from workers who are blue collar but steady income. I think that's the right area or zone to invest in.
Yeah. Now, there could be potential in other properties as well, maybe some nicer properties. It depends on what your target market is, right? I think there's still maybe a market for people who are relocating, they don't want to buy right off the bat, or people who are, you know, college hires, people who are relocating to the area for a new job. I think there's still some market for that. But if you want to build consistent portfolio, I think the C class is kind of the sweet spot for that. Um, now,
Yeah. The relocation that you said, right? That depends, right? Whether say somebody who's going to relocate. If not, then I think it's probably going to be empty or difficult to find a client. Whereas the other type, you're always going to have 100 people wanting to live in there.
that's the point right there. If you don't want any vacancies, the C class, you put a property out there and you have 50 good, 50 applications within 2 days.
Hmm.
The A class properties, yeah, the property might sit empty for a little bit, and that has holding costs, right? You're still paying for insurance, you're still paying for property taxes, maintenance, utilities on that property. You might eventually get it rented really high, but that might it's just going to take longer probably. And
Hmm.
and chances are
Yeah.
every year you're gonna have to find a new tenant because then that person will now buy a property. Now you have to find another
Yeah.
tenant. And in the C class,
Yeah.
you may have a very long term tenant. I have a tenant that's been in one of my properties for 27 years in that property.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Well, I had one who stayed there for 4 years before he moved out of Columbus. The other one has been staying there for 2 years. So yeah, I mean, once you have the right person, and I think they'll stay there if it's a good house.
and the good thing with that is if they don't move out, because you usually have some expenses, right? When they move out, you might do some
Hmm.
cleaning, maybe carpets, maybe painting. There's just basic maintenance. But if they stay there long term, you
Hmm.
delay some of those things because you don't have to do that
Hmm.
every year because
Yeah.
especially if they are living there, it's a little
Hmm.
bit of a bother for you to go paint the house when they're living there.
Hmm.
So you end up saving money on not having to do some of those things as often.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Good deal. Good deal.
And you'll experience all of this once you dive into it. which I think everybody should.
Yeah, and that's one of the things a lot of people say, well, maybe I should do it, but then you don't. And there's a learning process that comes with actually doing
Yeah.
it versus you can go to biggerpockets.com and get some info on it. You can go on YouTube, you can watch videos and learn about it, but there's nothing quite like actually doing it. The first property
Hmm.
that you buy, finding your first tenant, going through applications, doing some repairs on houses, all of those things is experience and learning that just comes from
Hmm.
hands-on experience.
Yeah. Start with one, feel it. I'm very confident that you should like it
Good deal.
because as I said, I started hesitant, but I think I don't have that hesitancy anymore.
Good
Now
deal.
it's only a matter of whether I have cash available to buy.
Yeah. And the good thing is, again, over time, that pile gets getting bigger because
Hmm.
property values increase. People usually ask me when is the best time to buy a house, right? And I tell them, well,
Hmm.
that would be 20 years ago. But the second best
Yeah.
is tomorrow,
Yeah.
because property prices likely will go up indefinitely. So if you could buy something 20 years ago, great. But we can't go back on time, so that you can buy it now. There's
Hmm.
concerns about rates, but you can always refinance, right? If
Hmm.
rates ever go down, you refinance, and if they don't go down, then you're already locked in your rate.
Hmm.
There are cash buyers out there too. It's a good opportunity as well because you can get discounted prices if you're a cash buyer. You don't pay market prices a lot of the time, so you get a little bit more leverage on negotiating things
Hmm.
if you're a cash buyer. But the best time to buy is, well, 20 years ago, and the second best would be today.
Yeah.
Good deal. Um, any other final thoughts as we wrap this up? First, thanks for joining me today. Just sharing your experience with others, maybe help some of those folks out there who are still a little bit on the fence on real estate investing. Um, any advice, anything else you would like to share with others?
Uh, Not really. I think I already talked about everything that's on the mind, but I think maybe just to repeat, I think there is a lot of hesitancy before you start because you think it's going to be a lot of work. You don't know how to go through it, but it's not as hard. Uh, I think all the tools that are out there make it really easy for people to invest in real estate. Uh, so if you're on the fence, I think now is the time to invest and reap the good returns that you have with rentals and the property prices going up.
Perfect. Thank you. So again, you don't have to be in real estate to invest in real estate. You don't have to come from
Hmm.
a real estate background or have a family of real estate investors. You can do that even if you have a full-time job and a busy life. You can manage your property yourself, but you can always hire someone to do that as well as your portfolio
Hmm.
grows. Um, Good deal. Hey, I appreciate you coming up on my channel today and sharing your experience. I hope that will help some of the folks out there who are considering real estate as an investment avenue. Um, I wish you all the best through this year. Maybe we'll get to work on another deal soon.
Yeah,
If you
sounds good.
have need any help with any property management kind of questions, real estate investing, find the right property, you can always call me, and I'll be more than happy to help you. And to everybody watching the video, the same offer goes to you. You have my contact there. Feel free to reach out to me as well, and be happy to help you find the right property and walk you through real estate investing and property management as well. Amal, thanks again. All the best to you and your family.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you for all the coaching you had so far.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Okay.
All right.
Well, you all have a
Bye.
good one.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.